members of the Army will forgive me for not wasting time in praise, because I have 5 minutes in relation to a report that has 100 pages, 12 appendices, and which run to 294 pages. I've read the 100 pages. I haven't read all of the appendices yet. This comes on top of the suffering and pain of numerous women and men who were ignored when they made complaints over a long period of time. I'm here today and I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that over 18 months ago, the Women of Honour went on the documentary on the Katie Hannon show, and wherever we were as women, I can tell you, we stood silent in utter disbelief, shock, and shared the pain as best we could at what we were hearing. It has taken quite some time now to get the report. You've had it for a number of weeks. I welcome that you've published it, Tánaiste. And so what does it tell us? It tells us so much that I can't go into in 5 minutes, but over 15 headings and makes 13 recommendations. And you've agreed with some of those, I think, immediately to progress them. The independent process, judicial process, the establishment of a restorative justice process that hasn't been mentioned at all. Personally, I'm never 100% about it, but I would just like you to respond to that. It has already been mentioned by Deputy Clerk on page 7. You get a taste of what's coming, where they explain tubbing, mobbing and beasting. I'll just mention one of them. Page 7, tubbing, placing of an individual in a barrel which may contain any combination of chemicals, oil, airplane fuel, deceased animal carcasses or other substances for the purposes of hazing or punishment. And that's just explaining some of the things that were done. I've heard the word watershed moment mentioned. What does watershed moment mean? What does that mean? Are we having a watershed moment now because of this report? Are we going to ask how we didn't have a watershed moment before this? Let's look back. 2000, research by Tom Clonan, who's now a senator, very brave man, who came forward and foolishly, by his own admission, thought things had improved and came back publicly to say, no, he was misled. Then we had the report by Dr. Eileen Dial, 2002, report by the Expert Advisory Group. No watershed moment there, followed by 3 reports, 2004, 8, 14, by the Independent Monitoring Group, on foot of the Expert Group 2002. What happened to those, Tánaiste? These are questions for you, for the Taoiseach and for the various ministers. What happened? They disbanded the Independent Monitoring Group. 3 monkeys come to mind: hear no evil, see no evil, do no evil. I know, I'll take that back, but that comes to mind. All of this, why did we disband the independent report? And then we have the documentary in September 21. The report is welcome, and it very clearly sets out or articulates the sexist, toxic and dangerous culture within the Defence Forces. In case there's any doubt, that continues today. Judge O'Hanlon, or the former judge, says the enduring nature of issues around unacceptable behaviour, not historic, ongoing. Now, we've had an utter failure to learn. And then, to top it all, I have a press release here that Chief of Staff says he had been unaware of abuse and bullying in the Defence Force. It beggars belief. It's simply not credible. And if he didn't know about it, that's not credible either. Nothing is credible about the report from this man, given the history that we hear. And I'm simply taking just 23 years of history based on the courage of those who came forward. I welcome that you're going with the recommendations, and you might confirm you're going with all of them. Now, the quotes that stand out for me in the short time I've left: to be female is to be considered an object rather than a full human being. Now, remember, the Commission for the Future of the Defence Forces failed to mention any of this. They made a reference to it in a very short, didn't take it into account when they looked at retention problems or any of the problems that the Army is facing and the Defence Forces. The perception of the Defence Forces was that the defence is more important what effect a sanction would have on the career of the alleged perpetrator. Women are viewed as occupying a low status in the Defence Forces. No safe environment for men or women. Listen to that. No safe environment. Apart from the horrendous nature of the alleged rapes and sexual assaults suffered and described in detail in this report, what happened afterwards is of equal concern. Instead of delivering a proper, modern, streamlined and skilled response to the complainant, the individual was often told to bury the complaint, or they were asked whether they seriously wanted to formally complain. And this is continued right up to today. Flexibility and alternative thinking is suspect. The Defence force values are undermined by the perception that the senior ranks believe the law does not apply to them. Where did we hear that before? Garda Síochána come to mind? Law does not apply to them. And I emphasise, I'm not talking about Gardaí on the ground. Pregnancy was described as career-ending. Can you imagine that? Complaints were described as career-ending, and the Defence Force's focus seems to have been on maintaining a certain image and controlling the narrative. I finish just by mentioning the impacts of the unacceptable behaviour. My time is up and I can't go into it. Everything from suicide to complete breakdown as a result, not just of the abuse, but the manner in which it was dealt with. So I'll ask you now for a timeline in relation to the recommendations. I will ask you for a commitment that the Women of Honour will be an integral part of forming the terms of reference in relation to the statutory inquiry, which should have taken place a year ago, but we're going with it now. And absolute clarity, so that we're not in this stall having to come in, men and women, constantly tabling questions, which is our job, but constantly, as we did in relation to this report. When is it going to be published? Who has it? Where is it in the Cabinet? And so on. Let's have clear lines of communication. Thank you for your forbearance.